Hi, this is Trent Clark with the Winners Find a Way show, and welcome. We are so happy to have you here. I am the CEO of Leadershipity, international speaker, serial entrepreneur, longtime coach in professional baseball, coaching in 3 World Series. And I am super excited to welcome my guest today, Ann Gafigan. Ann, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No, it's so good to have you. Like, we've been planning this for a while, so
I
I'm
know.
super excited that we actually finally got together on this. It's
Yeah.
awesome. And first of all, tell them where they can find you. Where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. So search Ann Gafigan. Can't miss it. And I'm on Twitter at Ann Gaff, ANNGAFF.
Okay,
That's where
and
you
those are
can
your
find
two.
me most of the time. Yep.
That's where
That's
they
where
can
I'm at.
find you. That's where you're hanging.
Yep.
Okay, cool. For the Winners Find a Way show, for our show, it is always about facing adversity, right? We're talking about have you ever felt like your losses are mounting? You need to find a better way. You've been in a position and it's a struggle. And if you are looking to get out of that struggle, I think this is the right place, whether you're already an entrepreneur, athlete, business leader, looking to start your journey to being elite. This is the place for you. And Ann's going to help us because Ann has been through a couple adversities. Is that fair?
Sure. Maybe more than a couple.
And maybe more than a couple. Yeah. Amazing. Maybe more than a couple. So let's talk about meeting Ann Gafigan. And for everybody, there's going to be a time at the end. So if you want to jump in with your Q&A, you got any questions for us, like please ask them in the chat. I'll watch it, monitor it, and we will do those at the end. So a few highlights I jotted down about Ann Gafigan. Now, are you married to, are you related to the comedian, of course, right?
Yes. Our uncles are cousins. And back before Jim Gaffigan made it big, he would use the family reunion email list to send out emails about his shows he was going to do. And he wasn't big yet. And so I was like, who's this relative that thinks he's going to be a comedian and is spamming my inbox with his little shows? And then one day the email said he was going to be on Letterman. And I was like, oh, this guy's legit. And then I saw him on Super Troopers and ended up getting to go to a show or two and meet him, and we figured out how we were related. So, yeah, our grandpas are cousins. Yeah.
That is so cool. Okay. So you got all sorts of cool stuff about you, Ann. I love it. So you were the American record holder in the 2000 and the 3000 steeplechase. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. And then you won the Olympic trials. You went to University of Nebraska first, did your career there. Are you from Nebraska, or where are you from?
I'm from Illinois, Springfield, Illinois.
Are you really?
Yeah.
The capital. All right.
The capital, the home of Lincoln.
So Springfield, Illinois, took you a little west, and now you reside in the Kansas City area. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Awesome. So super excited. So you've done this running deal. Let's jump into that a little bit, right? Let's talk about the steeplechase. It's one of my favorite runs. Like I love the way you had a great article years ago about what really is about the steeplechase, like what it really is. I read that article from like cover to cover, right? That was
in
great.
Wired, right?
In Wired magazine.
That's being a tech geek, it was pretty cool to be in Wired magazine, but talking about my athletic pursuits.
Like your two passions, right? Like,
yeah,
hey, I'm a steepler and I'm in Wired magazine, right?
Yeah, it was awesome. It's funny. I actually have multiple friends who are steeplers who are also tech geeks. There's something about it.
There's something about going into the water, like after a hurdle, that makes
you guess it doesn't sound logical, but there's a correlation, I think.
So remind me what you described in that article. I should have pulled that quote. In that article in Wired, you described the water scene, in the steeplechase of just like, chaos, right? Like this is where I think we watch like skateboarders and steeplers to see like what might happen in a couple instances. And
I think I referenced NASCAR. Yeah. It's better these days. When I first did the steeple in college, it was the first year that they had it for women.
Yes.
And so naturally everybody was doing it for the first time, and the water jump was just really rough. I mean, It was just like, you never knew who was going to fall down in front of you or hit you from behind. And so everybody would always gather over there and kind of wait to see a crash. It's better now. Crashes still happen. If you want to Google men and women, steeplechase water jump on YouTube, you'll find lots of people going face first into a barrier or into the water. But yeah.
I love it. And it's true. Like you see some, so tell real quickly, what's the distance from the top of that hurdle to the bottom of the water? That drop is significant. What is it?
Yeah, the hurdle for the women is 30 inches tall.
Okay.
The water jump, the pit is shaped like a wedge. So at its lowest point, I believe it's a meter, and then it gradually comes up to be even with the surface of the track after 12 feet. So a meter plus 30 inches at the very highest.
So the concept is, in addition to other hurdles on the track, of course, but on the concept on this is hit the top of that hurdle, get somewhere mid of the water, because you don't want to land right behind the water. It's too the depth is too bad. You're gonna have a tough time getting out. So you got to get out to lower how much water you actually have to land in.
Yep. So you want to land 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So first foot land in the water, which is a nice little cushion. And then you should be close enough to the end that your second step is out of the water. That's the ideal.
That's the concept and idea.
Mm-hmm.
And how often does that work for you? Is it like you've got that nailed down, like every time you could do that, or no?
Yeah, the water jump clicked for me pretty early. We practiced a lot into the long jump pit, but it clicked for me. So that ended up being one of my strengths, is being able to just, jump up on that without much effort, be 1 foot in, 1 foot out in the landing. And I really credit my background in soccer. I had pretty strong legs. It wasn't a big deal for me to do that in the middle of running hard. And I think for some people that was a big transition. Yeah.
You go right from, you're this college athlete, and then you say, all right, like, hey, I think I could take this to the next level. Did you know right out of college you were going to go compete, on the national level?
I would say I knew going into college, but there were a lot of doubts that happened in there while I was in college. Coming into college, I was a star recruit and just felt like as long as I work hard, I can achieve anything, go to the Olympics and set records and all of that, no problem. And I got a pretty good dose of reality right away of what that level is like. And I also dealt with just kind of some unknown reasons why I had some pretty bad seasons. Like I would get a cough and have it for months, or I just feel really fatigued, and they wouldn't be able to figure out why. So it's the worst when you're not performing well and you can't figure out why, because then there's nothing you can do to fix it. So I really struggled between sophomore and junior years, especially, and coming into my senior year was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to end up doing here, because I haven't done any of the things I planned on doing, and then was able to turn it around for my senior season. So I would say it wasn't until my last race of my senior season, which was the NCAA championships, that I actually was like, oh, this is not the end. I'm going to be able to keep competing. But until that point, I figured I was done. NCAA championships was going to be my last, and I wouldn't be competing post collegiately. So it kind of changed really quickly.
Yeah. So now let's take that real quickly right to that next level, which is how long after you finished the NCAAs is the Olympic trials?
It was 5 weeks that year, which isn't always the case. This year, the trials were only a week after NCAAs, I believe. But in 2004, I had 5 weeks.
Okay. So you were all trained, ready. Did you win the NCAAs?
No, I got 5th.
You got 5th, and then went on 5 weeks later with all the former college players, runners, all everybody, and you won the trials.
Yep. I dropped 20 seconds from my time too. So it was 5 weeks put to good use.
Yeah. What do you attribute that to?
Many things. So I was on that trajectory. First of all, I had started the season, and every single race was just figuring it out, getting better and better. So I was on that trajectory anyway. At the NCAA championships, we had a prelim and a final. And so we raced twice. And so obviously the second time you race, you're going to be somewhat fatigued. It also was over 100 degrees in Austin, Texas. So I knew that the weather was going to be better at trials. It was in Sacramento and it was in the evening. And I also wasn't going to have to run a prelim before. So I knew my legs would be fresher. I also, right after the NCAA championships, got out of a long-term relationship. And it was such that a big weight was lifted off my shoulders emotionally. And I was able to just really focus on what I wanted to do and not worry about, anybody else having a problem with that. And it's what I wanted. It's all I wanted to do. I was completely focused. And I was also back to myself of high school where I really dreamed big and believed in myself. It had taken the entire senior season to kind of get my mojo back. And so it was really a aligning of the stars for me.
Was the male steeplechase run in the Olympics for years before that?
Since the first Olympics, yes.
No way. So the first Olympics, the steeplechase has always been run. So let's take you back to, and I'm gonna dive into the moment, right? We're gonna review it. We're not gonna relive it, all right? But like 2004, you just finished the NCAAs. You're fifth at the NCAAs. 5 weeks later, it's the Olympic trials, and this is it. And there's this question of whether the Olympics would approve this and put it on the program for that year. So you win the trials, automatically making you an Olympian for the event. And then how long after that do you get the news like they're not going to do it?
I already knew. So the way that it works for an event to be added to the Olympics, it has to happen basically at least 3 years in advance.
Okay.
The process has to start at least. So first it has to be included in a number of regional championships around the world, US championships, European championships, African championships, etc. And then it gets added to the world championship program. And that happens every 2 years. And it basically, if it's not added to the world championships 3 years ahead of the Olympics, it's probably not going to get added to the Olympics.
Okay.
Because that's just how the process works. So we all knew going into that race that it was an Olympic event and there was no chance of it being added at the last minute. So I knew that, but I also didn't go into the race. Well, I would say I did go into the race thinking that I could place in the top 3 potentially, but it didn't really hit me that in another year I would have been an Olympian until the race was over. And I had won. I had set an American record. It was the number 2 time in the world so far that year when I ran it. And so that's when it really hit me that, if the event had been in the Olympics, I would have been a medal contender at that point.
Yeah, right.
And
so for the year,
it was
that's a silver medal for the year, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you just go in and compete just like you had all year, I mean, lots of things can happen, right? But I would have definitely been a contender. And so that's when it really hit me. And I would say that's probably the first time in my life that I felt like I wasn't able to do something, that I was hindered by my gender. It just hadn't happened before. I mean, growing up, I had played every sport I wanted to. There never was an issue. And so I just kind of felt like that's not a problem for my generation. And it just didn't really hit me until the race was over. So a lot of us steeplechasers that had been doing it in college, and my freshman year in college was the first year that the women could do it. So it was actually in the NCAA well before it was in the Olympics. It was in the NCAA for the first time in 2001 for women. It took another 7 years to get into the Olympics.
So when do you find it's added in 2008? Is that the year it's added to the Olympics?
Yes, that was the first time it was up.
So you find that
it was approved in like 05, 06 is when it was
That's right.
approved.
So you find out it's approved in 05, 06.
Yeah.
What's your competition status at that point in 05, 06? Are you training and getting ready, or what's your?
I was absolutely training. I did not make the 2005 World Championships. Was a team that we could have made. That was the first international team we could have made. I didn't make that team, but I wasn't too far off of making the team. I trained thinking it's no big deal. I'll just qualify in 2008. And as any athlete will tell you that does Olympic sports, it's very hard to get things exactly right on one day and not have another chance for 4 years.
Yeah.
And so on top of that, the money wasn't there because we weren't an Olympic event. There wasn't a sponsor knocking down my door like they would have if I was the American record holder in any other event. So I very much was working and supporting myself. And who's to say that if I hadn't had to do that, I would have made the team, but it certainly didn't make it easier. So I was kind of splitting my attention for those next 4 years. And when I got to the 2008 trials, I thought I was ready to go and had a good shot. And on the day of the final, didn't have my best day. And plenty of women did. And I didn't make the team.
Mm. Yeah. We talk about this day for that day all the time, right? Like, and when you talk about 4 years in between, we're talking near 1,500 this days for that one day that you have to be on to get in the trials. And then that one day in the Olympics, like there's just so much that has to happen.
Yeah.
That it's amazing when I think about the challenge and the mentality. That's a big challenge too. And now, did you study technology in college?
I did. I was a computer science major.
Okay. So were you already working in computer science, had already started like web development company? You've already just started that.
Yep. I had started my own company. First started as a freelancer just so I had a flexible schedule so I could train as I needed, and ended up incorporating and running it as a business for over a decade.
Wow. So this is how you're doing it. You're entrepreneur, to fund the dream.
Yeah.
And that's part of the gig, right? And so are you doing, web dev from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. while you got training time during the days?
No,
or how
you gotta get good sleep. You can't be doing that. No, I usually would do it more like between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. during the day, and then maybe a little bit in the evening. But my training would come in the morning and in the afternoon, and I'd be working in the other hours. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes I remember working from a hotel in Greece that charged us by the minute for a really bad internet connection.
Yeah.
And they kept coming in and getting upset with me that I was still in there because I think they thought I wasn't going to pay the bill. And I was like, I'm going to pay the bill. I'm getting paid to do this work. I'm going to pay the bill. It's better than not doing it at all. So I've worked in many different interesting places. That's for sure. I've worked on trains, obviously planes. I've worked in many countries, and it was a good gig to fund the dream because of that, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I tell that, to my kids now, and I'm like, that was the standard for us as athletes. Like we did our homework on the planes and on buses. Like, hey man, you do it whenever you can because it doesn't wait. Like, and you can't sit there and go, oh, well, I want to get back to my desk at my apartment or my dorm, or like that's not happening, right?
No, that wasn't an option.
Not an option.
No.
All right, so let's talk a few things about like. I love the quote from Chris McChesney and Sean McCovey. It says, "Winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win." You've overcome a lot of things in your life. What about you when you're up against it, losing, found a way to come back, found a way down but not out? Talk to me a couple times on that, because you had some ups and downs through your university career. I mean, so you've been on both sides of it, super winner, right? Number one in the trials, to not finishing where you want, and all of a sudden doubts creeping in, all those things.
Yeah, I mean, I largely did not have a successful collegiate career. Until the NCAA championships my senior year, it was pretty average, in some cases below average. So I had a decent freshman year and then really struggled for a variety of reasons. Sometimes I didn't even know what was going on with my body. Just wasn't doing what I was asking it to do. Computer science was quite a workload. So, there was a lot of stress associated with school. And, that had to have a priority as well. It wasn't one or the other for me. And So I think a lot of things contributed to that, some of which are unknown. And so when I went into my senior year, I had not done any of the goals that I had assumed I would achieve and I had set out to achieve, setting school records, winning Big 12s. It was Big 12 still. Nebraska was in the Big 12 when I was in college.
Yeah.
NCAA championships or even All-American. I hadn't even qualified for the NCAA championships yet going into my senior year, much less been an All-American or won. And I certainly wasn't anywhere close to qualifying for the 2004 Olympic trials, much less being a favorite to make the team. And so when I went into that final senior season, I really was just kind of at a crisis in my head of who am I? Because, all my life, I had grown to where I thought I was this amazing athlete that was just going to accomplish all of these things. Everyone in my hometown seemed to know who I was. I was in the paper all the time in high school, and I was a really good student too. And I was supposed to go do big things. And here I was just really, really struggling. And so I thought to myself, you know what? I just want to be able to look back on this year and say that I did everything I could.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't turn out the way I planned, I don't want to look back and think, well, you should have done this or that, or, you were doing this wrong. And I didn't want to have any regrets. And I felt like I could at least control that. I could control that I was going to do everything that I knew to do.
Yeah.
And so that's what I focused on. And I also focused on just, let's start over. If you have a good race today, let's be happy today. And let's not think about where you thought you would be 3 years ago and just go from there.
Yeah.
And it worked. It really worked. I got into my outdoor track season, and the first race that I had, I set a little bit of a PR, but it was enough to make me feel like, okay, so I'm back to where I was as a freshman. That's better than I have been, in recent years. And then that just kind of progressed, and I was 100% focused on only the things that were going to get me to success and nothing else. So I was 100% focused on training, nutrition, sleep, and managing my stress. And so managing my stress meant the secondary thing I had to focus on was school and making sure that I took care of the workload as soon as I could, so I didn't let it pile up and it didn't become a source of stress. Yeah. So all of those things, that was the only thing I focused on. I wasn't trying to focus on anything else really, and letting other things creep in. So it worked. And little by little, I was shaving time off of my PR. And then there was this awards event. We have a Student Athlete of the Year award event at the University of Nebraska. And someone had nominated me for Athlete of the Year, and I just submitted my essay and stuff, but thought, like, I know who wins those awards every year, and it's not me. I used to think that I was the type of person to win all of those awards, but it's not going to be me. This year I'm not the one. And but I submitted the essay and did all of that, and went to the event and was surprised to hear my name called for that award. And I think I went up there and mumbled some kind of thank you. I was just so shocked. And it was really a turning point for me, because it reminded me that I can be that girl that I thought I was when I was younger or going into college, and that other people thought that too. Yeah. So it just made me feel like, okay, there's hope here. Yeah. I have to start acting like it.
Okay.
And so I would say almost every race that season, when I shaved off seconds, I started acting like it more and more.
Yeah.
And thinking like it.
Yeah, thinking like it. I love that. So a couple of things I heard in that, which I think are really great. So, one of the things that I've found success, I think similar to you, was always no regrets, right? Like, hey, I think if I just leave it all on the line, like, let's see what happens, and I'm okay with the results. Which is in some people's eyes, that might be a lower of expectation, right? Like, because we set all the expectations, I'm going to be all conference, I'm going to win this title, I'm going to win that. You're like, okay, well, like, if I just put all those aside and do everything I can do, and let's just let it fall wherever it goes. If it's all conference, if it's fifth in the conference, like whatever it is, I'm going to leave it all on the line, and I'm going to
focus on the journey,
results,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people think that's lowering expectations, but I don't know if that's true, because I think it's just because people like you and I don't think we ever just like lower the expectation, like, oh yeah, well, I don't really care if I win or lose, right? Like that's never going to be the case, right?
Right.
So,
well, I'll tell you what, I think that sometimes setting those specific goals can be limiting.
mm-hmm.
Because if I would have gone into the senior season and instead of approaching it the way I did, where I focused on the journey and instead focused on a list of goals, I don't think I would have put on my list that I'm going to win the 2004 trials and set an American record.
That's right.
Because it would have been insane to do that. And so instead I focused on the journey. And by the time I got to the trials, I had gotten to the point where I was letting myself dream about, all right, what if you have a pretty good day? What if you have a great day?
Yeah.
What if you have an out of this world day?
Mm.
And the out of this world dream was setting an American record and winning. Yeah. I didn't tell anybody about it because I didn't want anybody to mess with my thoughts there. I was having fun thinking about it. So I didn't want anyone to bring me back to reality. Guess what happened?
Yeah, I think.
So I mean, sometimes you can limit yourself by, especially at the beginning, like, I read this quote the other day. I think I posted it on LinkedIn. What you think is possible right now is a function of what you know right now. Mm. And so at the beginning of senior season, if I had set goals based on what I knew at that time, they would have been fairly limiting. Yeah. Come to find out, right? I didn't know that. I wouldn't have known that at the time, but it would have been limiting. So, I'm a big believer in evolving what you think is possible and just making sure that you're setting yourself up to be ready for whatever opportunity presents itself. Do all the things, be ready, focus on that journey. And then you never know what's possible. You're going to find out. You're going to find out.
I love that. We have like a little system I've had for years called the growth positioning system. And when we're, pro sports is all these trials, right? It's just trial, especially baseball, because you come in minor leagues, and I coached another Nebraska guy, Darren Erstad, right? And you go along these trials and tribulations, and it's really about being in position for the next opportunity is very important. And I think a lot of people are challenged with that because it's, oh, well, that doesn't fit my narrative or what my goal says or what my agent says I should be doing by the end of this year. Or what if I should make the all-star team, or if I should get a bump to this level from A ball to AAA, I'm going to jump AA. And like, wait a minute, like if you just go out and be the best you can be, you position yourself, and especially that mentality. Once players would hit like that AA level or higher, you are one injury away from the major leagues, because they'll go like, oh, well, we got Gafigan down there. She's great. And we got Trent. He's kind of an old guy at AAA. I'd rather go with young Gafigan who's got potential. We know what Trent has, but Ann could be the next 10, 12 years, And so all of a sudden they'll pass somebody to go with young talent and develop them a little bit there. And so you have to be mentally ready. So you're positioning yourself all the time for that growth. And I don't think organizations do it. I don't think individuals do it very well. And they don't see like, wow, am I ready for when it comes? And by being in that journey every day, I think as much as it helps you see opportunity, it also lets you know what's not opportunity. Like, hey, is this really where I'm supposed to be on my journey? Because that kind of looks good, but if I really did it and really thought about it, that doesn't fit my narrative and the direction I'm on. Right. Why would I bend the course here?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I've heard it referred to as wayfinding, where you really, instead of saying, I want to get here, here's where I am, and here's how I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
Instead, just like taking one milestone at a time and figuring out how that changes your direction of where you're going based on all the new information and experience that you have. Yeah. You may end up here, you may end up here, who knows? But why limit yourself to this destination if it ends up not being the right one for you?
I never looked at it that way. And that's really unique because I do like to tell people when I was, from the time I was 22, uh, let's say 23, until the time I went into the World Series at 25 in 1995, I moved, I think 19 times in that time. So when you talk about the way, like
Wow.
the way to a
Yeah.
world championship went through 19 different cities,
You couldn't
right?
have planned that.
You can't plan that. Like you're like, oh, you know what I should do next? You know what the next opportunity is for me on my way?
Yeah.
It didn't feel like the next opportunity sometimes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk to you about that I thought you were really that probably this is when you're losing, it's stressful. It's not good, right? When things aren't
Right.
going your direction. One of the things you said kind of really hit me is like managing stress. It's very
Hmm.
important in the game. It's very important in your path. Let's talk a little bit about that. What was the intent and what's your mindset for that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that point in my life, my stress would come from school mostly. And some personal life stuff too, but mostly from school and balancing that with training like a competitive elite athlete. It's really hard. It's I don't think if you haven't done it, it's really hard to understand how hard
Yeah.
it is to be a student athlete. It's really difficult. And so my stress came from that, and managing it meant being completely on top of my game from a time management standpoint.
Yes.
As soon as you get an assignment, you start working on it, because if you leave it to the last second, that's how you stay up till 3 a.m., which is how you have a crappy workout the next day, which is how you get sick. And so, you had to stay on top of your day and use every minute in a way that was effective. And honestly, it's very difficult. I knew that I could do it for a semester, right? But then, like, if you're trying to do that 365 days a year, it's a fast track to burnout, because
Yeah.
you have to be so disciplined. And in life, I think, I have to manage that too, because life can get very busy when you add family to it, and friends and career, and all of your
Children.
personal goals and stuff.
Children.
Children, yes, absolutely. You have to make sure that you're not letting yourself get overwhelmed, and that you're also reacting to everything appropriately.
Mm,
Sometimes I can identify that I'm overreacting to stuff, and it's because my bandwidth is stretched really thin.
yep.
And you just got to figure out, okay, what are you wasting energy on and time on that needs to drop right now? you
Mm.
know and
I,
really getting disciplined about that.
I think it's one of the toughest things about women leaders, right? You get obviously leadership, more responsibility, right? And like women already don't have enough, right? Like let's add on a few other layers, of this thing. And it's just there's nothing easy about it. I had Jim Ayers on the show. He's the former president of Amway North America, and he talked about that. He's like, if I got a resume, I take athletes every time. Student athlete who has to sacrifice, who has to give up things, who knows exactly how to prioritize, time management. Like,
Yeah.
hey, my onboarding and training in the first year is like it's easy for them. Like this is nothing. And for
Yeah.
other folks, like it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, how do I do all that in the time? And they're like, yeah, it's just what are you talking about? Like, I'm gonna do all this and go to the gym at 10. And
Yeah.
yeah, they got to figure that out.
Yeah. If you have the desire to achieve that part, you figure out. And so having figured that out as an athlete, in college has been really beneficial to my life. Even the physical stuff, like when I talk about needing to prioritize sleep and nutrition to
Yes.
PR on the track, that's also how you feel good in life, and like get through a long day with enough energy to still focus on the things that matter, to
Yeah.
still be alert in a 4:30 meeting at the end of the day. That's pretty important.
Yeah.
And then to switch your brain to, mommy and spouse mode on the way home, and not just show up completely unavailable for the people that you love. Right.
Right.
So,
Not easy.
nutrition and sleep and stress management are every bit as important for me now as they were when I was competing.
Yeah. Well, and you think about that lesson from that and transferring that into COVID. We go through a pandemic and all of a sudden everyone, your heightened level of your immune system is becoming very important. And your immune
Yeah,
system is basically garnered and gained by rest and nutrition, right? So you're like,
exactly.
whoa, wait a minute. Like how I'm
Yeah.
taking care of myself all of a sudden plays a much bigger role in some things in prioritization that I think a lot of people we just overlook, right? We're just kind of like, I'll just eat the Snickers and another bag of potato chips. Like, wait a minute, like there's potential here of serious challenge.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it takes work, it takes forethought, it takes planning,
Yes.
but I do think that all my years of prioritizing the things that matter and also just going through adversity and then figuring out how to get through it and win anyway, it gives you like almost like a resume. It gives me like a core belief that even when I'm feeling really overwhelmed and nothing seems to be getting handled the way I'd like, I know that I'm going to figure out a way,
Mm.
because I have before, and I just have to get my mind right, get through that process of reacting and then figuring out what the next steps are. And I think, having that faith in yourself is really important.
Well, I think when we talk about winners find a way, part of that confidence is I've done it before. I've been
Yep.
down and I found a way before. So I'm
Yeah.
not too scared of, hey, it's not going well. I'll figure it out. Like
Yep.
I'm gonna work at it and get it right. Let me ask you a question. What do you think? You got a lot of powers, right? Like you're a world beater, right? So what do you think the superpower is that separates you from others and catapults you?
Superpower, huh? I think it is a core, really strong belief in myself and also in other people.
Hmm.
So I, I believe there's always a solution. I believe there's always a resolution. We just haven't figured it out yet
Yeah.
sometimes. And I think that belief leads to a level of persistence and resiliency. And also, I think it motivates the people around me. If I show that belief in them, and I feel like together we're going to find a way, I think that's probably the first thing that comes to my mind. And I think it feeds most of what I do. And so if there's anything else that might be considered a power, it probably stems from that.
Do you think you're an optimist?
Yeah, but with a heavy dose of realist.
All right. All right.
I'm
All right.
I'm not
I've
a
always
I'm
thought,
not a I'm not a everything is great all the time type person.
yeah,
I'm a let's look at what the reality is, but know that we're gonna figure out how to get through it.
and make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've held, it's interesting about the sleep and nutrition. I'm terrible about sleep. I need to be better for sure.
It's
And
it's a challenge. It's not as
oh,
easy as saying I'm gonna
I have
sleep
5 kids.
more. For some
Right.
people, it's really hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you should be
So
sleeping hard with five
yeah,
kids.
well, listen, there's no excuse, right? But like it is, you have got to be, um, our house. I mean, when you have 7 people running in a house, right?
Yeah.
It's always been how you run it is pretty critical. But my wife is highly well educated, nutrition, development, health, and she feeds us so well. And I gotta tell you, like, I don't get sick like ever. Like, and when I am, it like knocks me down for like 2 days, but it's like every 4 years or something, right? And
Yeah.
I'm it's like a superpower. Like when people go, hey, can you catch this flight and be here and jump in the morning and do this thing for us? And I'm like, yeah, I'm on. Like
Yep.
I'll do it. I think my little trump card is like, let me just throw my nutrition because like I don't
Yeah.
put stuff in my body that's gonna hinder like the next day and like stay with you like
Right.
and beat you down, right? So
Yeah.
I've used that nutrition side forever that I
Yep.
just don't go. Now that doesn't mean I don't have a sweet tooth or something like that, but
Sure. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
tough things that you can't recover very quickly from. I just don't have them in my system, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, it's just getting it right on 80% of the time and being really consistent. It's not
yes.
about, I'm not every Sunday making out my 3 meals a day and putting them in the fridge. I mean, I love to be that person, but I'm not. But I am planning to the extent that I'm not going to get home, at 7 p.m. and have nothing but,
microwave dinner,
a jar of peanut butter to spoon out of. Yeah. Like, I'm doing enough to make sure that I can get what I need. I'm consistent enough that I don't let myself get, behind. Hydration is a part of that too, so planning hydration and really just developing good habits. Cause then it's not a chore. It's not like, I have to eat a salad right now, or I have to eat vegetables. It's like, this is what's in my fridge,
I always loved, being in Europe with, the standard operating of stop by the market and this is the vegetables and stuff I need for tonight. Right. And it's like fresh produce and like, we're mixing it up and this is the plan. And it was like, wow, like there's some real value to that nutrition.
There's plenty of McDonald's over there too, but
What's that?
You're right. So there's plenty of McDonald's over there too, but you're right.
There's that too.
You can find the good or the bad. Yep.
Yeah. That and Kentucky Fried Chicken, like they're booming, right? So
yeah.
So what if a core value or belief or action that you took when you were down that turned things for you? What do you think? Is there some value that you'd like to pass on to people that you just say, hey, listen, when things go for me, like I can always turn to this value. Like I get back on course this way.
One of my favorite quotes is from G.I. Jane.
Yeah.
And it's and the Master Chief is reading from his book and he reads, I feel like it's a poem. He says, I never saw a wild thing feel sorry for itself. Something like a frozen bird will fall dead without ever having felt sorry for itself. And so I don't know why, I just always love that quote, but I love the movie. So I think that's part of it. But for me, like I let myself mope around when I'm upset about something for a certain amount of time. And then after not too long, I let myself do that. You got to get it out. You got to go through your process. I eventually just like that quote comes into my head. Like I never saw a wild thing feel sorry for itself, meaning you're the wild thing. Stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah. You got to get up and go for it.
Start facing it and deal with it, and that is an empowering quote to me. It's not a stop feeling sorry for yourself, like demeaning quote. It's an empowering quote because of that wild thing piece.
Yeah.
And it just motivates me to be the person that gets through this and sees the other side, as opposed to letting it consume you and walk all over you. So kind of taking the power back.
That's awesome. I want to take some quick fires at you on a couple of questions because I know we're running out of time, but so few women in tech. Do you see that trend changing?
I do think it's getting better. I think it's been socialized enough that people are talking about it. There are a lot of great programs across the country. I actually have, there's an intern at Dimensional Innovations where I work right now that is here because I taught her how to code when she was in high school through a volunteer teaching program. So, I mean, those things matter and they have a long-term effect. So sometimes you don't see like a huge result right away, but they do have an effect. So it's still a problem. The numbers are still not great, but I do think it's getting better.
So mentoring is near and dear to your heart.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. You've had a lot of success and won a lot. What's the best battle that you've conquered in your lifetime?
Probably just my own demons. I used to be so hard on myself and just very kind of condescending and mean in my head. And I feel like I took that energy and turned it around to fight for me instead of against me. And it
so like
reverberates
bad self-talk
in my life. Huh?
Bad self-talk.
Yeah.
Okay. How'd you turn it around?
A lot of fighting in my head. I mean, I remember a lot of fighting in my head between these two voices. I mean, I remember in high school doing this like project for some class, and it was like you draw something and you write something that fits within the drawing, and it was about this war between these two voices in my head that were, positive and negative.
Yeah.
And so I feel like when I look back, I think, well, it's good that I acknowledged that it was happening.
Yeah.
right? Like as a high school, I acknowledged it was happening. I wrote about it. And, you know, not that I steadily made linear progress, but throughout my life, I've battled with that voice. And over time,
Yeah.
it's become a winning battle. Whereas she might like rear her head now and then, but I know how to deal with her.
Yeah.
And the default is not her, it's the voice that knows, that motivates me and that kind of thing. So I think that's a battle that anybody can overcome. It's an endurance event for sure.
Yeah, I would say, and I love that. An endurance event is, I was thinking about, as you were talking about that, a bad self-talk is a very fierce competitor.
It
Like
is.
they
It's
don't,
the most formidable competitor. You can't do anything if that's
yeah,
going on in your head.
yeah,
It doesn't matter what else is going on,
yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, and it's not a rollover. Like, oh, hey, I told my voice there just to stop, and so it's over now.
No,
Like,
it's a
yeah,
journey.
you're gonna need something stronger than that. It's like,
Yeah.
that's
I,
good.
I
Okay.
always say to people, talk to yourself the way your best friend would talk to you. Think
Yeah,
about it that way.
it's so true. And I think at this time, I've had a couple guys on. I had Vincent Lancy on. He wrote a book called Mr. Lancy Talks Mental Health. Mr. Lancy Talks Mental Health. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal right now in a pandemic. Everyone
Yeah,
got, guess what? If you don't like you, and all of a sudden you're in a pandemic and you got to be spending all this time with you, like
that's
I
rough.
see there's a lot of people I've seen, and I may be guilty of this. I don't know, but you get busy, and sometimes that's, hey, I'm busy because I don't want to spend too much time with me, and
Yeah,
because I'm fighting my fierce competitor here. And this
yeah,
is one of the ways I beat them. Like if I've only got an hour a day to actually finally sit down, I've already minimized the time in my head, right? And
yeah,
so I think there's some thought that, and then all of a sudden you go to this, hey, let's shut down. You got all this time for you, and like, I don't know if that's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, I think it's really important to get really comfortable with who's in your head, and I find that writing helps a lot. So I try to write down when I'm thinking my worst thoughts, and I write down when I'm thinking my best thoughts.
Journaling,
Because
like you journal.
yeah, yeah, and yep, and also writing down when you have wins, because then you can go back and you can look, and sometimes writing down the negative thoughts you're having makes you realize how irrational they are.
Yes.
Like, come on, like this is not the truth here.
Yeah.
And then if you've also written down, your best moments and your best successes, you can see, oh, this is who you are at your
Yeah.
best. This is who you want to be. This is who you can be. So kind of that juxtaposition. I'm not someone who journals every single day. I journal in the very highs and the very lows, but I think it's really helpful.
Yeah. It's so good. When you've done all this, I mean, as athletes, we self-assess, assess. I mean, we're constantly doing an audit of excellence, right?
Yeah.
Um, So there's a lot of mirror test. I love the mirror test. Every morning you got to get in there, brush your teeth, and I've had a couple morning where I'm kind of hiding from it. Like I don't
Yeah.
want you to look at me, right? And knowing I haven't really got it done the way I'd maybe want to, right? But what is something that everyone, when like you see that in the mirror, like the one thing that maybe a lot of people miss, that it's there for them if they reflect on it and see it, but they miss it. What do you think that one thing is?
I think your best self is in there. Your
Mm,
best self doesn't, it's not an accident. Your best self is in there. And if you don't feel that, then you got to do the work to find him or her, you know,
mm.
and to bring that person to the day instead of whatever you're getting in the moment. And I think what people miss is that they are entirely in control of that. They
Yeah.
can make a decision as to how they want to talk to themselves, how they want to approach the day. They can figure out the proper triggers for themselves, whether that's getting up and exercising or meditating or listening to certain type of music. My mood, I found I can really change with music. And so
Yes.
that's a great thing. Then if you have your playlist or your genre that's your go-to to get you in the right mindset, then you know that about yourself. So
Yeah.
I think people miss how much they're in control of their own life and how they feel about it, to be honest.
That's awesome, man. I mean, I know our listeners see value today in this episode. I mean, I enjoyed learning about best self. I enjoyed learning about facing adversity, getting back to no regrets, do everything I can control, leave it on the line, and, you know, let the expectations out a little bit and let it fall. I enjoyed learning about managing stress, like how important that is when we go along, and how we take care of ourselves, putting ourselves first, our self-care, that persistence and resilience it requires to keep winning, and finding a way. And then the best self, I love that. Talk to you like your best friend talks to you, the people that admire you. And I'm a massive proponent of music cause I love it. And been in it from like theater and everything from early age. But I tell you, as much as I'm a proponent, I also caution people with what they're putting in their minds. Like some of the stuff
Sure.
that kids choose, and I'm like, that's awful. Like,
Mhm.
like thinking through this, like what you need in your mind is more positive, not stuff that's some stuff that's out there in some of the genres, right?
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so the time before we go, best way to win. Is there something that you want to share with the listeners we did not touch on today?
Um, the last thing I would share is something I have kind of a conversation that's recent in my mind because it was a couple week long conversation with a good friend of mine. And it involved basically having a job offer that this person felt it was very scary because it was such an amazing offer. And so
Yeah.
that's supposed to be a great thing, right?
Yeah.
But I
Right.
think there were feelings of inadequacy, some imposter syndrome, some wondering
Sure.
what is the catch, and
Yeah.
maybe there are things here that aren't as good as I'm thinking they are, and I'm going to figure it out and wish I had made this decision. And also just lots of questions about, well, what do they want from me? I'm not getting much clear direction, that kind of stuff. And I said, you know what? Be the expert that they're hiring you to be. They came to you, they want you for this role. That's very clear. What's getting in the way is your reaction to it and all these thoughts that you're putting
Mm,
in your head. Be the expert they want you to be. And that's something that I learned going up on the stage and speaking, is that the people in the audience are your biggest fans. They want you to do a great job.
yeah.
And so if you're feeling like you're not going to do a good job, that pressure's coming from you. They want you to get up there and just knock their socks off. And if you think
Right.
about it that way, that's actually very empowering. And
Mm.
so, I would think, go up there and be the person that they came to get inspiration from. And I think you can apply that to many other things in life, a meeting, a conversation, a project. And so that's what I would leave everybody with.
Love it. Share your social media again on LinkedIn, Ann Gafigan, and on Twitter.
ANNGAFF, and Gaff.
GAFF. Yes.
Yep.
And her name's right there on her picture there. Then all right. So your quote, was that your quote of the day? Is it your go-to quote for when things are down? I know we were gonna do the quote of the day.
I never saw a wild thing feel sorry for itself.
Yeah, I love that.
Yep. That's it. I'm going with that one.
I love that. For everyone else, you can follow us on the Leadershipity YouTube channel. We are on leadershipity.com. You can find it either on all the social medias, either at Leadershipity or Trent M. Clark. We're at both. You can easily find us there. Um, for me, I thought a lot about our show. We do a lot of things, and it's very important that for listeners, we want to continue to find the one percenters. And this is so great going into Tokyo to talk about the Olympics and everything that's going on. So this is great timing. We want to, if you'll rate us 5 stars, always love that. We work hard to find value delivering one percenters that come in and will deliver content for you. So that's so important to us, and we want to do that each and every time. So thankful for that. The Pyramid of Leadershipity, our ebook, is coming out soon. We hope you'll look for that. You can DM or email if you want to know more about that. We are super excited about all the iddies of leadership and talking about that pyramid. That's going to be super awesome, and looking very much forward to that. Do you have a closing remark for us, Ann?
I don't. Everybody go out there and talk to yourself nice. How about that?
I love that. I mean, we're just not seeing enough of that, like how important that is, and that self-care, talking to yourself well, and being open and everything about that. That is absolutely critical. We will be joined next Friday by Bobby Magianis, the hitting coach for the Atlanta Braves. I'm excited about welcoming Bobby. Bobby's a good friend of mine. He and I coached together years ago with the Los Angeles Angels. Bobby has been in professional baseball, I think, over 30 years now, I believe. He's a longtime guy, so super excited, and he's got a great journey all the way to the major leagues, from a long way through. So he's got a great story to share, and I can't wait for him to share that. It's going to be awesome. What I will close with for Ann here is, as I was thinking this week, I always take some time to think through the week and think through, what we're talking about, who's going to be here, all the different conversations that we have. And a lot of things come to me, almost like as the week goes, we see different things that enter into your life, because your thought process, you're looking for opportunity to talk more about the issues that we face, who's going to come on, some of the challenge there, looking at the background story of where you've been. And that's always so great. So I always look for something that comes in. And one of the things that struck me was, I'm not sure, I think you may have posted it actually. I saw this post, and it said, it was a quote by Ray Dalio, right? Who wrote
That
Principles.
could have been me.
Yeah. Never rule out a goal because you think it's unattainable.
Yep.
And I love it. We talked a
Me.
lot about goals. Never rule out a goal because you think it's unattainable. I thought that was so important. And I think it's what we talked a little bit about when you and I were kind of, hey, if I set this thing, maybe it's not the right goal at all. And like, so I don't know, like you said, if you'd have ruled out being the time trial champion in 04 at the beginning of 04, because you quote unquote didn't have the knowledge then that you'd have that ability 9 months later, because that's a long way away, right? 9 months. I mean, we're talking about almost 300 days. And a lot can happen.
I can't tell you how many times I have conversations at work and in life where someone just immediately shuts down a thought that they have after expressing it because they don't think there's any way it could happen. And it can be small things, or big things, right? And I'm like, well, wait a minute, that's an interesting idea. Let's talk about it. And sure, it might take more work than going and saying to somebody, we want to do this, and getting the yes. It might take some, political maneuvering, convincing, data backup, that kind of thing. But let's not shut it down just because we don't think it'll be accepted or possible or what have you. Let's seek it out. Let's suss it out and see if we can, at least exhaust the options before we completely say, never mind, because if you had that thought, there's a good reason. And so I'm always pushing people to make sure to explore all of the options and get as much information as you can before you just shut down a process.
That quote for me, thinking about you, it just landed for me. I mean, I just thought that is, winners find a way, and willing to talk about that opportunity. Just as you said, like, is it really unattainable? Like, there are 10 steps to everything, right? Like, we can back into those 10 steps. Somehow everybody got there. I tell a lot of people that road to elite, there is a clear pattern to it. Where everyone stumbles is it's not easy, right? Like, but the path is actually very clear. Like, there are just some principles that you can go in, and if you can follow those steps, but I mean, are you willing to make the sacrifices? Are you willing to put in the time? Do you really have this ability to have the mindset, the mentality, the self-discipline? There's so many things that are on top of that while it may even seem simple, when you look at the 10 steps, they're not easy.
Yeah. Or known.
That's awesome.
Those 10 steps might not even be known.
Yeah. And I am so excited that you were on today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Winners Find a Way show. And until next Friday, we'll hope and look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks so much for having me, Trent.